No, I didn't want to. I need to. I need to tell you that I'm going to be looking getting a chick number 3. There's another one. Just a young thing at the table chair, just a that looking the Niki, Tabachimpi, Yamleche, go to it, Gilo Sabio, go to you, but Bemasi, Gavo Jones, Gavota, Gawasampo in some chair.
Good evening. Welcome to our very first teaching of the new year of 2026. And to gather together to receive teachings on the Mahayana Dharma is certainly something of great good fortune.
Di Dondalea, and it Janju Sim the Chodo Simke, the Janju Simpi, Simki, Tone, Janju Simpicho, Paradishimbatula, Levi Yamling Rimbati, Manzo, Dustin Changore, the Nezadi Nelia, Janju Simki, Penda, and the Janju Sim Sonyata, and Dusine, Janju Sim Sonyalia, and Diva Shabala Sopa, Kewajuba, and Jola Sopa, and Liu Tiketuan, and the Chigi Shishin Liu. And the Jimbatan, the Tsuru Sobigi, and Yamli Jimbatima, those Genesis Savare, that Dalo Nangazuete, Gosuedian, Sevin Yamli Jimbatus and Gosuede.
For a teaching or the training one is engaging in to be that of the Mahayana, then it requires that it be in the context of bodhicitta. To generate bodhicitta, each individual needs to reflect deeply on the faults of samsara, recognizing how as long as they are bound in these suffering realms of samsara and continuing to suffer, they will never gain a moment of peace. Reflecting until a burning desire arises in a deep conviction, I must emerge from these suffering realms. This then is the mind of definite emergence. With this as a foundation, which is generated in relation to one's own lived experience and one's own wish for freedom, one then lifts one's gaze and looks out at others, recognizing how they too, just like me, want to experience suffering and be free of pain, but are bound in the suffering realms of samsara for the same reason. This then is used to generate compassion for others, the deep and abiding wish, may beings gain freedom from suffering. One develops this further, developing the mind of bodhicitta, which is where one generates the determined attitude, I will become a Buddha so that I have sufficient skills and qualities to be able to perfectly guide all beings to gain their liberation from suffering. I make this commitment. So this then is the generation of bodhicitta, which comes about in dependence on compassion, which itself comes about in dependence on definite emergence, the attitude that is definite about emerging from the sufferings of samsara. And then, having generated bodhicitta, one then engages in the various trainings of the bodhisattva, training one's mind in the 6 perfections. So in our bodhisattva text here, engaging in the way of life of a bodhisattva, the text started in the first chapter by presenting the benefits of bodhicitta, so that one gives rise to a yearning to become a bodhisattva. Then in the second and third chapters, one prepares one's mind through accumulation and purification, and that includes the first of the bodhisattva trainings, that of generosity. Then came the practice of ethical restraint of the bodhisattva in the practices on conscientiousness and vigilance. So we've looked at 2 of the 6 trainings of the bodhisattva, the perfections of the bodhisattva. Having looked at generosity and ethics, now we start with the 3rd, that of patience.
dusu yoba che dusu yoba ina na dusu tangma to dusu shanda lega la tanggo wa na dusu ya cheje ko dusu tangma to ba sang de cheje ko yoba dusu tang to ba de ne che she yoba da she se gi ne tunjen cha sang sang wa tunjen zo mya la ka le ho re de zang de ne gi 데니기 최제게 다 롭전 시킨 점물나라 밀 바바 제변의 시로 뉴뉴 차대로 데네 자당도 데네 시고 배야고래 선배 소수기 소수에 들이야 데니기 최제야 고고브라바 데니기 안지 제엘야 한수 튕긴 차상 창되바 한 소수기 내나제메 류디고 여바 최셰세 시간 여바 냐기 고가 여바 뒤세티니 배야고래 선배기 다 소수 가와고미야다 근데 내게 다심자 탐지기도 상계 고마마토네 탑민도 지사 상계 고마토발라 진심비 죄비게 냠내디게 지고고 내게 죄변님네제 롭정하제 냠내 탈친네 상계 고마뉴도 토바지기 셈베게다 군원 데네시 제체제 니던달이야 지게 죄주게 냐 지간주게 냐다 안 최삼제야들이야 무디제 탈침바지 셈베게다 데네게 도치앙도 군노도스케 하는 알아서 하셔 니가 알아서 차사 안 데네게 토네 안 지글로지를 향직 도시네 세베냐는 마음어서 안데 강아도도 강아서 도시네 냐시지야디 냐냠르지야로 고소야 도시 로아
To be able to train one's mind in the Mahayana Dharma requires the gathering together of a vast number of favorable conditions. One requires, firstly, to have an interest in the Dharma. Secondly, that one has the capacity, the mental capacity and the physical health to hear the teachings. And one also needs to have sufficient time and space opportunity in one's life so that one can carve out a bit of time to hear teachings and reflect on them. So it's these and many other conditions that are required to be able to meet the teachings and engage with them. So this is important to recognize just how fortunate each one of us is, because in our world there are many human beings. Very few have any interest in the Mahayana Dharma, and of those who have an interest in the Dharma, there are very few who actually have all those required conditions so that they can fulfill this wish to cultivate the Mahayana Dharma within them. So each of us here, whether in person or online, have created the causes and are now enjoying that result of having the interest in the Dharma, having met a qualified teacher, being in a position in life where one's physical health and mental health and time is sufficient to be able to hear teachings and reflect on the teachings. So I encourage you to rejoice in your good fortune, but also recognize how incredibly rare such an opportunity it is. And use these two recognitions, the mind of rejoicing and the recognition of its rarity, to make the commitment. I will listen to these teachings, and I'll continue to listen to these teachings, and not leave it at a mere gathering of knowledge, but I'll train my mind in the way that I'm guided, so that I can develop this remarkable quality of patience of the Mahayana within. So this is what I'm sharing here is how the attitude I've developed within myself, and I continue to commit to training my mind in the Mahayana Dharma. And I ask of you to join me in this journey of cultivating the minds of the Bodhisattva within.
다 더드나 시신류데 더드나 나가서 류가 있음게 니제도 мя디 잠바다 시신 땡지네 게디나 전 시신 땡지 류가 있으면 니제도 베게 수rim송고래 사제 당 조디 데네시 슈바레 지나 시신류 제위 더드베 있는다 전 시신 땡 류다 게디나 류가 쥐바 파송제 멤비 추서 마당와지 아니 지게 송고래 사제 데네시 슈바다
to make the link with what we've just concluded, which is the 5th chapter, the chapter on vigilance. So it's, whilst it's entitled Vigilance, this incorporates mindfulness too. So there the training is how to develop these excellent qualities of mindfulness and vigilance, ensuring that at all times one is utilizing these friends of the practitioner, these friends of mindfulness and vigilance, to ensure that one lives within the ethical restraint of one's restraining one's physical, verbal, and mental behavior within the confines of what is ethical. So there, in brief, the training is to at all times to be watching one's physical behavior, one's way of speaking, and one's mind, to ensure that the three are within the bounds of what is ethical. So that, in brief, is what we've just concluded looking at.
Jimbada Children, the Sopi Parsin set up on Yamne Parsin Dugan and Sopi Parsin Yamne somebody and the Suchin Chagore. It's not a server, Sopi Parsin Yamne Jada, Sopi Comtang, Sopi Yamne Gorsungore. The next other Sopi Yamne said, Ben Geshe Thubten. It's not done to get Children Yamne da Yamne Yakuchale and the Chiki Sopi Yamne Yaku. Things in that Sherata, Deniki Yamne Kiwi, Yamne Yapuchon, Sevati, Subi Yamne Go, which is other Subi Yamne the Kitchen Borshu Chaderua.
In this text, earlier we looked at the first perfection, that of generosity. Then we looked over 2 chapters, that of ethics. And now we come to the third perfection, that of patience. So the training in patience is of crucial importance, because for the various other important perfections to be well accomplished within oneself, one has to have the quality of patience. To live within the confines of ethical restraint, one needs to have patience. To be able to develop excellent concentration, one needs to have the quality of patience. To develop wisdom, one needs to have the quality of patience. So this is a chapter of and a training of paramount importance.
Gyun Kama Shova Chala Yajananga Meva should do Dugina, Severo Chegorova, Dima Chandu, Dini, and Joko Chado, and Macharova, the Musevarova. Says I didn't serve us, Eddie, Bejig, Guameva, and the chicken Timbursi, due to what the Seva Sagic, Dandaru, Tasheru, in the Chagorova, Sevas in it.
Patience has the quality of being a very stable mind. So a mind that is trained in patience, not just one where one sporadically patient, but well trained, it is a quality that is stable. So one can liken it to, if one has some fragile but important possessions, one will place them on a table so that they're not stood on and broken. But the table that you'll choose to place them on, because they are of importance and you don't want them to break, will be a table that is stable. It's not wobbly, but stable. So this is a similar function that patience needs to have, that of stability.
Siktura Duyolanda Lamsa Sembade Gurche and Ekochi Gurjo and Gurjo, just so Semagiva Chan and Museva Chagua. Penny Kazi Lamne, Sosolia 2, Sem Siktura Slavene, Sosolia, Semlia, Guamachi, Conrad, and Semagiva Machavache, Sem Huluchi, de Guamata Dutuana, Sevara, Seva, just that Semlia. Sem Yuadro Delia, and the Chige Semlia, Yuadro de la Rig Manguro, open Leagaroche, La Cale Mangurache, Javion de Miliage, Roborache, Cale Manguja, Caleshu had the Cala, the Caledi, and then Masuache, that Jetu Samare, you tangy Robotic message, you shall have a chagger, the Museva chagger, just a Sem Yuadro. 디나신 나 진내 나서로 직강아 시우실래도 야 나가 되네야 되게 낮에 되게 강한 제어도 갑라 야셈 추진 배셈 마지고 차야다 되네 셈 부수고 차 강한 셈 무쇠 봐자 그러봐 내라야 되니글이야 아직 레 되니게 좀제 레견에다 기회 삼단 셈 되니게 교화 마태바지 셈 흘려지 셈 기회 초소 삼단 되거든 아니 쇠바라 자거로 안디 나신한테 기회 냠는 지야래 니 샤나게 뇌바 제바래 뇌바 제게 강아제야 기회 냠는 저도 소소리셈ля 강아 튕게 강아제야 라서바다 되네야 줄리 내나세게 강아제 강아체야도 아니 셈디 교시 셈라다 말아 아니 콘라세야 녀모제다 말아 용고로와 되니게 교환의 셈 쇠바래 저 두고 쇠바들이 이거 말 되네려 셈 교환 마도 셈 템부 hö시시 두고는 나 쇠바세야지 오래 제가 되네 인자다 저 되니게 셈 le giwe nyamlen kar chebe chebale shan ro chebala giwe nyamlen gombala kangada dine kaze chebe ne ya ansem gyuwa me ba je andele tembu che nyamlen che tuyagi samda cha del da de sube nyamlen jangore se di ko song ko wa da.
Now, right at the outset of this chapter, I want to emphasize a crucial point that patience, like the other Buddhist trainings, is a training of the mind. So what it means to be patient is that one's mind is patient. So to give an illustration, usually if someone says a lot of unkind words to us, maybe criticizes us, berates us, and maybe even humiliates us, usually our mind responds quite negatively. That is a mind that is not patient. Even if in such an instance, perhaps the other person has authority or power, one stays silent, even expressionless. But if the mind is upset, one is not patient. So patience is about the mind. It is not whether one is physically or verbally reacting, it's about whether the mind is reacting. This is important to be clear on. A person is trained well in patience. When someone else says unkind words to them, the person who's skilled in patience, their mind will stay spacious, relaxed, open. They will not be upset. So this is the crucial point about the training in patience. It is about whether the mind is patient or not. And there are so many instances where patience is required. For example, out of a good heart, if you are helping someone in need, but that person is maybe ungrateful or very difficult, gives you a hard time, then it's quite commonplace to get upset with them. Perhaps to say, well, if that's your attitude, sort it out yourself and walk away. Patient person, their mind would stay undisturbed. They know that there is a need, and they would skillfully look at how they could help this person. So instead of getting upset, they would continue to be able to be of benefit. Furthermore, all too often if we are ill, perhaps it's a serious illness or we're in a lot of pain, then it's very common to get upset, feeling that this is so unfair, feeling sorry for oneself, getting dispirited, thinking of all the consequences now that one has perhaps been diagnosed with a serious illness or is incapacitated by pain. A patient person will respond very differently. They will look at this arising of illness or pain in a very different way, and they will be able to transform this into virtue. And thereby, instead of being upset and suffering ever more, their suffering is greatly reduced and they can utilize this opportunity to create virtue. So there are a wide variety of sources from which our mind becomes unhappy. It can be from others, it can be through our own inner turmoil, it can be in terms of hardships of the Dharma. The practice or the training in patience is about whatever one encounters, one ensures one's mind stays undisturbed. No matter what others say or do to you, or what outer conditions one encounters, or what inner turmoil is arising within, one's mind stays undisturbed. And in this way, with an undisturbed mind that is stable, one can continue to engage and accrue virtue. This then is a mind that is trained in patience.
아니네 자다 저기 진비 냠는데 다만이 초람나 졸람게 내가서 진비 냠는 지나 진바 수준 수바 전에 사산 냠는 난거데 진비 냠는 조데 초람 졸람 내가서 난거래 장도 줘야 돼 장제되는 사당보 전주스마 사당보 토요도 진비 냠는기 파친데다 다시 그 땡스 마스 톱사래 제가 되네 자다 사당보에서는 되네 진비 냠는 제발라 강하 균이네 강하 티고 말에 사당보 전주스마 통남 토요도 진비 냠는 제발 강하 균 티고 말 소람나 졸라 내가서 진비 냠는 제가 강하 돼서 티고로 봐 수부기 진배다 빈 진바 사생이 진바다 봐 추기 진바다 류기 진바 진비 냠는 막무여로 봐다 제자다 소주기는 진배님은 또 장들지 고 진배님은 제 자도다 사당부 토요도다 톱사이jel라 근데 진배님은 가서 나 강하기는 지금 말 진배님은 첼하고 톱아서 첼하고 해도 솔람나 졸람니 그서 님는 딜레다 하고도 켜봐도 봐봐 톱사와 해서 이제다 사당부에 내가서 토요도 되네 이 상승이 진바다야 추기 진바다야 류기 진바 류진 다야라 강하기님의 진바까지 담배네 다 튕긴 돈에 강하면이다 튕기 이제 가리 진바다면에 코란도 튕기 용고 요하래다 진바다라고 하래 진바다 강하면 진바 다 추림세야 되다 추림 냠는데다 진배 냠는 사당배 내가서 다양 추림 냠는 좋은 거 추림 냠는 좋다 그 파진주 되네야 림바림바 지로라 사당배니 봐서 도시네 근데네게 제자다 추림 냠는 좋은 사당배 니바 다 사니바 토요도 추림 냠는데 찰라고 토바도 추림 손에 강하게 매바 용거래 사 숨비 내가서다 세비 냠네 사당번마 사 솔람졸라 내가서 사당배 내가서 사 숨비 내가서 다 사숨바 사당 사숨바 토요도 세비 냠네 찰라고 토바래 다 세비 냠네 제할이야 강하게 매바 용거래서 두스네 거 림바림바사 두스네 잔 송거래 파진 쪽에 냠는데 찰라바토가 찰라바토 니모 오마딜레 하바도 토와 야 자시고야 보자와래서 그러 진비니 냠는 배체라고 더 봐온 나가는 이제 언제제 예 추리냠 세비 냠는 리오리 시베 냠는 강 세비 냠는 제 어디래 첼라고 더 봐시거든
The Bodhisattva, on the training grounds of the paths of accumulation and preparation, the first two of the 5 parts, have an emphasis, or placed an emphasis on the perfection of generosity. And of the 3 types of generosity, there's that of material generosity, and secondly that of giving of fearlessness, and particular emphasis on the 3rd type, that of giving of the Dharma. So that's a primary focus of the Bodhisattva, not a sole focus, but a primary focus, is in the giving of themselves in various ways, so as to accumulate merit. And through this accumulation of merit, they'll also be meditating on emptiness, and when they come to realize emptiness directly, they gain the path of seeing and become an Arya being. Then when they are on the paths of seeing and meditation, the Arya paths of the Bodhisattva, this is divided into 10 grounds. Of the 10, on the first ground, there the Bodhisattva the Bodhisattva's training in generosity comes to a level of being unsurpassed. In other words, it comes to the point, developed to the point on the first ground of the Bodhisattva, where the Bodhisattva will not experience problems from this point in the practice of generosity. So because of all the qualities of a Bodhisattva, when they're practicing generosity on the paths of accumulation and preparation, so prior to the path of seeing and prior to the first ground of the Bodhisattva paths, the Bodhisattva will encounter some challenges, some hardships in the practice of generosity. But when they complete the first ground of the paths of seeing and meditation on that bridge, they will no longer experience hardships in the practice of generosity. Similarly, with the second ground, there the practice of ethics. This attains the quality of being unsurpassed. So therefore, now in terms of their ethics, they will not experience any challenges or hardships of any type. And then on the third ground, then the third perfection, that of patience, gains this quality of being unsurpassed.
나 control 이미텔이야 나 저기 통외게 통화다 마통화 이거 연구를 가서 마통외게 control 이미 가르가르 연구를 교인가 님에서는 교인으로 교인 가르가르 연구 가서 통쇼수 교발라 가르 연구를 해야지 언도시네 숨거래 이제 원다 control 아주 두신 삼단에 control 깨야지 간스 기고래 집에 삼단에 나도 셈리야 마지바단 강아로 태어도 control 깨야지 연구를 받아 배낭하는 저기 지상 소수교 되버로 지지 미다 튜머데 소수교 삼노당와나 신직 내가 주변에 퍼져디 내가 소수교 삼노당와나 신직 켈리 마지바나 걸라야다 나 퍼져라야 돼 소수교 되바나시 말랍나 안 되바나시 말라바체 소수 되면 매바지라바나 나가서 소수 코르게 지사다 소수교 되바다 미튠바다 소수교 되발 매바 안 되니 지제요도 아니 소수로 코르라야 지금 거 되는 지금 거도 안지네 아직 지 깔레라 지 레가라 지레 깔레라 카 빼지 되니기 깔레 슈치물 해야 돼 나야 한지 코로나야라서다 안 되니시 용거로 두 섬단의 코로나다다 되니시 직다 두 아서 하고 야로 코로디 되니시 이거로 와다
The antidote of patience is applied against the obstacle, the inner obstacle of anger. So it's through cultivating a mind of patience that one subdues the mind of anger. So just to say, as the translator, as an aside, this word anger is going to come up a lot in this chapter. Always bear in mind, there's a very broad breadth of expressions that are included within this one word, from frustration and annoyance at one end to rage and hatred on the other end. All are encompassed within the one word, anger. And hence, if you're using other translations, you'll see a variety of words is used. So back to then what Genla said. So as patience is the antidote to anger, first, in this chapter, we look at the faults of anger. Thereafter, having recognized the faults of anger, we look at the benefits of patience. Because seeing these two together, how I do not want to have to experience anger, how I want to cultivate patience, these first two outlines will lead us to want to dive into the third outline, the various methods for cultivating patience. So the first part is where we start here, is that of the faults of anger. So the faults of anger there are two broad categories. Those which are observable or visible, those which can be seen, and those which are unobservable faults of anger, so those which are not so apparent or visible. Furthermore, so within this then, one also needs to be clear on how anger arises, because it doesn't just arise causelessly, it comes in a sequence. So in general, you could say it comes from the mind being unhappy about something. So what that it is unhappy about becomes very broad. It doesn't need to be a big thing, it can be something very insignificant, but the mind can become disturbed, frustrated, annoyed, enraged. So very commonly, it's things such as our wishes being impeded. So there's some kind of obstacle, maybe another person, maybe just something, that is impeding the fulfillment of our wishes. Something going against our wishes, something we do not like happening or being done. This then can lead to anger. Or just things not going as easily as we would like. We have a task to do, but something's going wrong, it's taking longer than we'd like. And just from this kind of condition is sufficient to lead to anger potentially arising.
그래서 나한테 공르게 되는 기도 스페한테 10초라 삼다베나 더 되나 서서히 되바다 튠바 미튠바치다 서서히 되바다 마바바치 중화이나 공르게 기와래 공르랑게 더 규견 되는데다 공르게 양양게 소소 되바다 미튠바다 소소를 되바다 마바바 소소 되바 메바다 소소를 되바 미튠바치 중간에 될 때는 소소 코르게 되는 거로 지사자 소소 되바도 튠바다 소소 되바를 바바 중간에 안에 소소 거부용하다 튠모야 돼 자고로 봐 되바다 미튠바지 소소 되바라 마바바 되바 메바 지라 직제에는 미 소소게 지 직사야게로 진 되바 메바 지라 미 사고를 납나 다 권랑기로 왔네 내가 제 되바 메바 지라 제고를 놨는데 되바 메바 들어와라 소소 되바 메바 되바 마바바 다 소소이랑 직 소소를 직라고 고여봐 소소를 되바 여바질 마라바이나 코라야 소소이 되바지 제고야질 마제바이나 코라야 돈 뒤나 소소이 되바라 마바바다 되바디 미디움 버지 주바이나 델라테네 코르기 용거래다.
When you looking at what spurred the arisal of anger, generally, you can put this into two categories, where things have happened that are not in accordance with our wishes, or when something unwanted befalls us. Generally, things, whatever leads to the arisal of anger, we can place in those two buckets. Things happening that are not in accordance with our wishes, or when the unwanted befalls us. Then anger all too often arises.
Now, contribute to this word. I didn't my section. Because I don't want this situation to do. And the control said the control Geshe Yuche, control Geshe Thubten the control Geshe Thubten control Geshe Yuche, and the control Geshe and the Geshe Jumpre, Geshe Pa, Geshe Nugre, control Geshe control the Geshe Nugores, control Geshe Jumpre Sigurua, Jazan control Geshe Jumpore, control Geshe Yusula Gibore, and the control Geshe Gasa can Yore said, control Geshe Gasa dilla, and the Gasa dinnet in the Yores, Cabachik, control Geshe Udilla, and the Gasa dinnet in the Yores, a chick, that control Gion, control the Gesa, Panetan can snugores, Sechi, Nubi, Serushi, audition sum share the Chawarda. You control Geshe Gasa, control Gion, control Digi.
I've just mentioned then these two general areas that lead to the arisal of anger. So keep those in mind, because you can use them in your reflections to recognize, what set me off was because something was not in accordance with my wishes, or as something unwanted befell me. And in this way, one comes to recognize more easily what sets off the sequence that ends in anger. Now, to look at anger, one looks at the fault of anger through identifying what it is one is angry towards, the object that our anger is directed towards. That's one point. A second is the person who is angry, the angry person. And the third is how anger causes harm. So there's the object, in other words, what the anger is directed towards, the angry person, and then how anger harms.
Now, and then you Congress came and kiss a udela, Janju Semba, and the nigger Janju Semba, my Yungura, Janju Semba Yungur, Janju Semba Conrazali, Janju Semba Yungure, Janju Semba Mayimba Yungure, what I did, Janju Semba, Janju Mayimba. That Janju Semba Chigi, Janju Contra Kihan Gaza de la, Janju Semba Yungure, Janju Semba Mayimba Yungura, Contra Kihan Gaza de la, that Janju Semba Yungure, Janju Semba Mayimba Yungure, contre qui c'est eu de la yan, je sais pas, je sais pas, ni contre qui c'est que quand ça de la yan, je sais pas, je sais pas, mais ni ga用过的是。
Of those, looking at two, the object and then the angry person. The object, in other words, to whom, in this case whom, the anger is directed, two general categories, a bodhisattva and a non-bodhisattva. So the anger towards whom the anger is directed, either a bodhisattva or a non-bodhisattva. And then in terms of the angry person, there again two, an angry bodhisattva or an angry non-bodhisattva.
Adine Janju Semba Jigi Korong Toba Toa Janju Semba Jila Konda Savaina Dibache is Janju Semba Konda Sagan Janju Semba Che Digi Korong Le Toba Toa Janju Semba Jila and the Konda Savana Konda Chewa Chunga Chewa Surata Toba Chunga Digi Janju Semba Toba Toa Chewa Jilia Konda Savaina Diva Chewa Konda Diva Chewa and then Denigi Konda Sawa Yungurwa, the Janju Semba Digi, Korona, Topanyan Bigi, Janju Semba de la Konda Sawa Yungore, that Denik Kole, Janju Sem, Konda Sasa Yudu Sumure, then the Janju Semba Jigi, Konda Sawa Ina, Konda Saga Janju Semba Ina, Konda Sasa Yudila, Korona Topa Chewe, Janju Semba Jikungore, Korona Topanyan Bigi, Janju Semba Yungore, and Janju Semba Mayimba, Janju Semba Mayimba Yungore, Konda Sasa Yudu Sumdua.
So if we take a bodhisattva who gets angry, they can be angry towards another bodhisattva who is at a higher level of attainment than they are. Or they can be angry towards a bodhisattva at the same level of attainment as they are. Or the bodhisattva can be angry towards a non-bodhisattva. So these three objects towards whom a bodhisattva may be angry. A bodhisattva at a high level, the same level, or non-bodhisattva. For a bodhisattva at a high level, for them they would only be get angry at either a lower bodhisattva or a non-bodhisattva. And for a non-bodhisattva, they could get angry either at a bodhisattva, so certainly someone at a higher level than the non-bodhisattva, or a fellow non-bodhisattva. And for a we'll look at a non-bodhisattva getting angry towards or getting angry at a bodhisattva.
Kawa Tondu Saba Yi, Jinna Deshe Chela So, Lashe Gain de Gunyang, Kondriji Jumbaches.
So in that light, or that context of a non-bodhisattva getting angry at a bodhisattva, we look at the first verse. A single instance of anger overcomes all excellent practice, no matter when or where or what, such as generosity and venerating the Sugātas, accumulated over 1,000 eons.
Tena gewa chum shedi, gewa chum na kondro kena, gewa chum rukri si roda, tena gewa dela ya yewa chayari de, yewa dik chayidu, jugi kasore, dadi di kasa, tso dela, sunam yu tso da, yeshi yu tso yi na ne, da sunam yu tso ge gewa di ma chum ya si ma de, yeshi yu tso yu gewa di chum ya si yu sungo ma de, chida di ne zada, di ma, So
here we'll look particularly at the word overcome, or very often translated as destroy. So what is overcome or destroyed? It would be a merit or virtue. And of the types of merit, this can be divided into two, that of the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of wisdom. Here it just refers to the accumulation of merit that can be overcome by anger, not the accumulation of wisdom that cannot be overcome by anger.
Jinna Geshe Chulaso, Leche Gain Sedu, that Gehading Sungore, Jada de Jimba Dang, Jimba Jinda Sedu, Jimbe Yamne Jimba Taya, Jetta Gawa Donla, so Gawa Dongi Negaso, that Dondu Neche, Jimba Taya, Gawati, Jimba Tayada. Deshe Sedu, Conjosum Soda, Deshe San Yeche, and Delia and Chokonja, Kedungo Chola, Chobovoa. Gonjo Sumlia, Chebofuada, and the Chatsawa, Gorakoa, Gawasabati, Gawati Yeso, the Nige Leche, Gawakayimba Digi, and Chubene, Janju Sembe, the Nige Razachi, Janju Semba Chelia, Condrich Kevaina, Digi Gawati Pachunguri, or Dak, the Nige Sashi Gawatono Sabigi, and Jimbata, Sudimta, and the Nigi, and the Jige, Gonjo Sumla, Chebopua, Sobata, Chicha, Sawa, Goa, and the Chebopu Gawati, the Nig Jumbruguri, Esu, the Donadisumore, Gawa, don't be that Gawatono Sabai, Jinda, Deshe Chela, so Leche Kain, the Gunja Sama. So
to go in the order of the Tibetan, we'll start from the bottom of the verse and work our way up. So the first line in the Tibetan, our fourth line, accumulated over 1,000 eons. So this refers to the period of time over which the merit being referred to here was accumulated. Then what merit is being referred to here, because it relates to this word overcomes. So we've got the period of time that the merit was accumulated, and what type of merit are we talking about? So for us in English, the third line, such as generosity and venerating the Sugātas. So the term Sugāta here, we should take to reference not just Buddhas, but the three jewels. So venerating the three jewels, making offerings to the three jewels. And then for us in English, the second line, so all such excellent practices that have been, one has engaged in, excellent practices such as venerating the three jewels, making offerings to them, other practices of generosity, done over a period of 1,000 eons.
There do not Jimbada, Turim Yamne Chavada, and the Conjo Sumlia, Chibopoa, Chasawa, and the Jiggy, and the Nigi Chibopi, Gawati, and the Lajes, the Kayimba, the Nigi, Jibi Kawasaba, Kawakayimba, the year, and the judges of Mayimba Jigi, Dan Kawasaba, Kawatondu Saba, Dona Nero Duli, the Neg Sabat, the Nigi, and Dawaji, Loji, Lokashi, Mayimba, Kawatondu Sabi, Gawata, 갸치무슈 차기로와 돈도 배겨와 되게 안에 전시스만 많이 받지게 전시스 받지리야 컨트롤하고 있는 데니기 컨트롤레비 디바티기 컨트롤티기 개와티기 맞좀 그래 사실 더르네 되는 거래 특히 시각이 가와 짐바다 주전다 가서
As the second line, excellent practices. So this refers to a variety of practices of accumulation, such as generosity, but also prostrations, as well as ethical restraint. So generosity and ethical restraint. All of this can be overcome or suppressed by anger when anger arises in an ordinary being at a bodhisattva.
난이게 정부에서 나가와 돈도 사베사 가와 돈 세야 되는데 가와직라 네 가와직 가천직세지야 망고래 세상 차베게 만주게 지게 zemli 차베 가와 아니 네베 가와 지베 가와 나 돈도 가 돈베 가와서 가와 차베 가와 되는 zemli 바 차야 고주네 차사마서버도 가와 니슈 담바 요래제래 그 차베 가와 되네 안에 지게 되네 네베링을 가와 니슈 네베링을 가와 니슈 다네네 마 냠야고 고수네 다 지베 가와서라 되네 가와 니슈리 용으래서 되네 냠네 지로도 동동버자 되네 가와 니슈리 그래서 대 가와 니슈 게시 차와라 되네 게시 담바질라 가신직세오라 가와 첨보직이라고 그래 세상 되네게 가와 동도 사베 되네게 링려야 사셰베게 개와디게 세지 좀 그래 세데 가신 가와 동도 사바세 동세 디시고 되네 가와 동 사베다 지우직 차들어와게 뱀마시 균링고 개첨보 사베 개와디게 되네 전시 셈발라 콘르세요 콘르지기 봐좀 그래 세데 가와 착배네 봐. 고주네 그 점블링 마선에 마 차에 고주네. 아니 뭐 차산마사 봐도 그 뒤수를 가와 니슈 담아 요래래. 지바 되네 동바 돼. 매바 차산.
So as to emphasize the greatness of time that is 1,000 eons. For the eon in which teachings abide, or the period in which teachings abide, or the world abides, sorry, not teachings, the world abides, this comes about in dependence on first the gathering together of the various elements, creating the world, then the abiding of the world, then the destruction of the world, and then a period where there is no world, a period that would be called empty. And each of these are periods of 20 eons in duration. So 20 eons for accumulating or the gathering of the various elements, then the abiding, then the destruction. Each of these are about 20 eons, and then a period of emptiness, or not emptiness, of nothingness, when there is no world. So these are each periods of 20 eons. Gathered together, they make a single great eon, and these are the 1,000 great eons that are destroyed by, are overcome by a single instance of anger from an ordinary person towards a bodhisattva.
And the name, Chisanda dos Chidane dos Chin Sungore, there's one of the Danganzu, the Janju Sembala, Condos head, Dele, Danganzu. Dinana ba shimju chena da mang khabar mang boyong guruwa bene janjis donla janjis ba jimba jile nga zo ha mo che na khonro sa de da khonro chunjun sa yore chembo sa na so yong guruwa bene khonro chen de je bene janjis ba jimba jile nga zo ha mo che ngo sing ba che ma xia je dine janjis ba de sosolia an ji lega ra ku be ne sosodio ba na nga lega leg mesen nga lega nya ku sam khonro sa chung ora desu khonro de yo khonro chunju ro wa ni da janjis ba lo khonro sa wa re de khonro sa yu de janjis ba re de khonro chunju cha ro wa da desu gi dine khonro de gi da ka wa tong do sa be gi di ba jong re jong ma re se ne be 심지체바에는 다시 정구인교 말에 다다데 가르송으로서는 장주 셈바 인바다 하고 내려 군롱 콜이야 마가위 미가위 군롱제 군롱 네버 삼 네버지야 더 견제제가 삼로 군내랑 군롱 뒤토네 아니 봐 견제제 아니 제게 견제제 아니 가르가 저기 견제제 콘라사 아니 콘라제 제래야 아니 제게 인간 저기 다지 교바야 맞게바제 다가라당이 콘라사한테 콜 지금 여바지에서 디소선비 삼다베나 다 콘르슈 쳔버와다 제고 유디 전주선바 임바 하고 원군원에 콜에 네바지야랑 콜에 견제지 삼로 그네 당전에 콘르라 콘르게 아니 콘르게비 네 게비 조와 제뒤에 아니 되네야 아니 지금 교바 맞게바제 무디네 콘르게제 콘르게바 다도 조선바이나 다디 어느 콘르 쳔보 다디 네게 콘르를 게바이나 나가와 돈도 서비 디바 다기리 예사지 송고 디바 점도 그래 송고로 와다.
A lot of what I've said thus far comes now as background to come to make this point now, which is how one should relate to this, what we have as the fourth line, this accumulated over 1,000 eons, all this virtue, this merit destroyed by a single instance or not destroyed, overcome by a single instance of anger, is that we should be very clear that there are a wide number of factors that will determine how much merit is overcome or not. So what we spoke about earlier is the variety, if a bodhisattva is getting angry at another bodhisattva, and what levels they are at, or if there's getting angry at an ordinary being, and so forth. So that's to show that there is quite some variety in this. Also, it was mentioned earlier that this word anger encompasses many gradients. So therefore, one from this should understand that it's not any single instance of anger overcomes merit accumulated over 1,000 eons. Let's take a particularly severe instance of anger, which would be an ordinary being towards someone that they know is a bodhisattva. And that anger is deep felt, is coming from deep within, and it's abiding, and it's perhaps full-blown rage or even hatred. So here, the ordinary person knows this is a bodhisattva, and yet their anger is of great strength, great duration, and they act out under this anger. Perhaps they talk and complain and shout. All of this makes it much, much, much worse than, for example, when an ordinary being is angry at a bodhisattva, but they have no idea that person's a bodhisattva. Moreover, the anger, it's quite trivial. Perhaps the ordinary person's helping the bodhisattva, and they're getting a bit tired and frustrated and annoyed, and they just got in a bit of an annoyed state of mind towards the bodhisattva, but then it's quickly passes and is forgotten. Far lighter. That is a single instance of anger, again, because anger is this very broad term, but it is not going to destroy 1,000 eons because of merit, because it is something so much lighter. So therefore, this is to make the point, not to take this too literally, but to understand there's an extensive gradient. From one extent, one is in full-blown rage and hatred. Another extent, there's just a brief annoyance, vastly different. As well as if the ordinary being knows whether someone's a bodhisattva or is completely oblivious to that.
ane chimbala tsurim la so bada denegi konjo somla chebo puwa la so bada denegi ane gowa chasa wala so diba dige ane jige konro kiji ji geya de diba dige jom rogre songsha junju nale dene za da nga ane ji janju senba yimba hamo wa konro sa ngi konro sa yudele janju senba 지유시기에 얘는 배사샤 당에 코는 망고사요래 당에 가와돈스 비디바 좀 디바처럼 개와처럼 매와 차좀 매와 찬사래 선배기다 셈슌제 아디치게 아주 다들 처음에 선배기 되는게 삼노다야게 강아체 용마시바 말마 yung sikirwa, yung sibe, 당한도 심주 제배 있는 제자다 가와동 sibe, 전주 sembal로 콘로선나 가와동도 sibe, 그래서 중국에서 해야 돼. 전주 sembe 유 전주 sibe 임바 잠라 콘로데라 콘로 충충 제사와 잠기 되네지 이 말에서 다 콘로서 해야 되라. 림바 망보 용거래 제자 되네자 당한주게 전주 sembe 임바질라 하모와 콘로사베네 다 콘로 전부 용말로 왔다 충주대 소식이 되와다 두나마도 내가다 리나 마리기 돈에 그치 콘로 콘로 난기마다 디 콘로 제 충주마다 침보스 말와 다 콘로 체에디게 가르 연구를 해서나 소식이 따와다 미팅바 소식이다 베능아 저기 네 따와 뒤에 냠는 된된 지에 그런 결혼도 놀고도 거지 지금도 선배게 내내게 삼다제 아니 코로코나 아직 배 거기니게 따와 비기도 배 두자래 샤선배게 코로나가 있나 다디 코로 침못 차고로 와 제사디 고노한다 디샤고 마담 그래서 당한도 그신 디버사야 될래야 망고여로 와 그신 디버사야 될래나 디버도 저와 뭐시 탈도 찾아 사바이나 디버 침못 차기래서 네네 제자 디버 저와 제바 잠기 탈고시 다 탈도 마사나 디버 충주마도 침못 말 루요 말해서 제는 뭐시 진에 탈도 마사바이네 뭐시 저와 진에 탈도 마루바이네 아니 레디 레 용수 저바 차고 말해 제자다 레기 나선기에 디베 레 용수 저바라 저와 뭐시 탈도 차사 상고 그래서 니나진 개와라 지바라와 개와데 야고지 용발에 아니 개와 뭐시 저와 뭐시 탈도 야고 저네 개와데 부이다고 이게 침물이고 니나제다 파 콘르사네 아니 미개와 침보 사발에 저와 뭐시 탈도스데 침보 차사 상고야 돼 차고로 봐 차사 마사나 충충마다 책임 말아 어디네 이제 나도 들어볼라 디네 이제 sembal로 컨트롤하는 가고동의 세배계와 점야디 배식 매일 여기 말했었나 이거다.
A few points I want you to take away from this first verse. Firstly, the recognizing that anger is much more destructive if directed at a bodhisattva as opposed to an ordinary being, and that we actually do not know really who is a bodhisattva or not, in that bodhisattvas appear amongst us as ordinary so that they can then interact with us and be of benefit in our lives. But we do not know the quality of beings' minds. A bodhisattva does not necessarily act in a particular way, following a particular script. So therefore, use this as motivation to guard your mind against the arisal of anger, no matter towards whom. Do not see some as, oh no, I shouldn't criticize that person, and those others doesn't matter. Rather, guard your mind no matter who you are engaging with or who you are thinking about. And secondly, use this understanding that we do not know who is a bodhisattva and who is not, as motivation in terms of purification, when one has got angry. Recognizing perhaps this person is a bodhisattva, I really need to apply myself now to purify and commit to not doing so again. Further key point, another point to take away, is that one shouldn't take this the enumeration in this verse too literally. Rather, take this as a basis to develop your intelligence, your understanding, your knowledge. Understanding that, first of all, there is a wide gradient included within this word anger. And therefore, there is a wide gradient in result that will follow from that. So for a single instance of anger to overcome virtue, how much virtue is overcome depends on many factors. For example, towards whom one is angry is one. Second, the strength of mind of anger. A mind of frustration or annoyance, as opposed to deep-felt rage and hatred, clearly will have a very different consequence. And this is similar then to what we covered in weekend teachings last year, in the Lamrim teachings on karma, where we looked at how a karmic action for a karmic action to be complete, it requires four factors for that karmic action to be complete. Namely, the object towards whom the act is made, the motivation, or the intention, which includes motivation and the affliction. And in other words, it needs to be intentional action. One is wanting to do it, does it on purpose. And then there's the performance and the completion. So these four parts of object, the mental component, performance, and completion are required for an act to be complete, whether virtuous or non-virtuous. So in terms of anger, to be a complete action will have a stronger consequence than if it is not a complete action. So this too shows that not merely any expression of anger overcomes a virtue accumulated over 1,000 eons. We need to understand that this is talking generally, and it is dependent on many factors. Then the third point to take away that was mentioned earlier is, now whilst we're looking at the faults of anger at the start of this chapter, look back and look at each day and see where your mind got annoyed or frustrated, or maybe you got angry. Look at the reason why. And don't then let your mind go off and complain about what happened, but rather look and see. Did it come from these general buckets of something impeded what I wanted, impeded my wishes being fulfilled, or something went against my general wishes? So see, just like that, and you recognize that in general, whatever frustrates me tends to be either things are going against my wishes or my wishes are not being fulfilled.
Control Chixedi, Chigdi Cares, Angitelia, Shimbuchigore, Cochabache, Control Chixedi, Control Chigni, Sum Tanga Deneseve, and the Kijima Chixed, Kijima Chicribe, the Kijima Chis, the Kijima de Duty Kijima said, and Jazomi Kijima said, and the Yungore, the Kijima de Carre said, the Shimshi, Duty Kijimalana, Namdo Cooks jet. This too much is or Jazo Bekich Basina, Yaching out the legal mason, go to Nelegati Masaba, the Paradilla, Jaso Mikichi. Now that Mazu Chushi, going to dinner, go to near Chumazo Badi, Jaso Mikichi Pade. Then Mazon and the Chu Malam do, Sarah didn't get Jaso Mikichi Machis. Jaso Mikichi, George go to near Chu Mazo Paradilla, the Jaso Mikichi. Tell you know Mango Yungore, Jaso Bekichi, but Shogun by Nimu, Yungoba, the Yungore, Contaba, the Yungore, and Chuzichi or Kamakashi Yung Sigrid. The Didikijima said, do you know Jimadomarda? The Nichimadoma. Chesnati Kijima, so Contra Chigi Jumba Chess, Contra Kiji or Jixia, the Contra Kiji Jumba Chigi. Chesa Tamajimade. Di Contra Chigi Jumba Chess, Contra Kijima Chigi Jumba Chigi. Chesnata Kijima Chix said, do you take Kichimare, Jasobi Kichimare, yes, Shimbuchi, Chawore. Chesnata, but yet Jasomi Kichipachi, yes, in secret, the nation. That the Kijima. That Jom said, Jom not the caress, that there seems you or a Chebacher. Do you kitchen? And do Mambo rather? That the Tikijima, do you kitchen, Jazome Kichibare said, that Kakiri said the Pakishi water. That day, that the Kichimba said Kichima did that, do you kitchima like as a Jazobe Kichima, Jazo, Jazo Kichima. Temaji Chada Karcha like Uninger, what Jawaji go to near Maso Paradi, do you tell that just make it in Malagore? That Kiji, the Temachi, or Kiji, Temachi, Temachi, Uninger, Beneduetan Chigla, Duetan Chilana, Chuzi doing the Alanda, Kamachi doing the Alanda Yorua, Duetan Chigua, the Nuta, Duetan Chig, the Delay, Duetan Chignaloya, Uninger, the Hedge or what. That did you did you see Kijima, you knew the Jasobi Kijaba the Koko, yes. That about the Kijima said, do you Kijima, Jasoma Kijibares? Do you Kijima said, Denis Lagora, Denis Denis Trachilia, Duzichilia, Chalmasman, Dujure, Shina, Chigore, Shene dene dusu jigla, duju regina dusu jigdela, dudikichi mala gore, dusu yunsechela dudikichi mala gore. Chesna dene dusu reve se or, conrasayagi, dene dusu conrasayad reve se or, da di ma yin se or da, then garesene, jasu megashi masi do go to dinade, conrasane, gama hashe yedeke dusu tirungo. Tema jigdileda, tema jigdile, tema ringdung yorvada. Keji malo de tenchik la gorvada, da tenchik nanglo ekona during those yorvada.
So there was just a Geshe didn't say much, but he had to get it so that I understood. So what we in the final line in this first verse in the Tibetan, which is fast the first line. So it was a discussion whether it's a single instant of anger or a single instance of anger. And so in other words, is it a single occasion of being angry or each moment within an occasion? So this is the discussion, because the Tibetan literally just says one or single, or so it can be interpreted as a single time, a single instance, or a moment, an instant within that.
Tema chigre, but then you make says right.
Because they take the mark with them.
Then you make says you're right. Nimicilla, Nimicilla, Nimerington, Nimeton Mangor, that didn't get Chavas, you take Kichimala, Nimichi Roach. In I did now, that Tonton darling dust you ring among way to Chavai.
So here it is as translated, a single instance. So when one is angry, whilst there will be sometimes many moments in there, other times not so many moments in there, it can be, in other words, of varying lengths. Here it just refers to a single instance. So when one is angry on an occasion. So not a moment. Because one may be angry for a considerable period of time, or just a few moments, but it will both would count as a single instance.
Jomgre said that Jomna Garis and Adelia Jabachigore. Jomna said the Kawa don't so be Kawa Jomdruger said, you name ever so sugar, thou you name ever so sugar bear, and the Kare said that Jom said, thou you name ever so go my the Kawa don't so be Kawa, thou you name ever so go my res. Caresina Jom said he could Nubala, Nubala, Nubachun Tangors, Benedigi, Benanzugi, Sanjit Bene, Lamkulaki, just Dawajix now get who winner, and then nobody contact and the Digi, nobody, Jopaki, nobody, nursing Univokoya, the Logic Square, Denegi, Lamkia, Univokoya. And the Jehu, Yido, Jehu, Mahobana, Jehu, Pusoba, Yabu Chunadi, Panul Taya, Jehu Chunadi, Jehu Chunadi, Mia, the Yabu Miadi, in the Kiwi Jehu, the Digi, the Jebutua, the Digi Mia, the Univokoya, Mia, Univokoya, then the Mia, the just New Mia, the Nayunguri, said that Gawa Jom said, Gawa never search every person, never search the Jom like the Mares, Telecatona, Carsosna. Condo di Gawa Jomgre said, Condo di Gawi Nubal and Tewu, you don't want Jimmy Nubadilla, Nugores, Nubad Pa Chung Daje, and Dewu di Mialia, Jun Diada, and the Jig Yawachene, Benimul Diada, La Soba, the Nation Gores, Nubal Nibet, Mado, Gawaras, or never so go, my essay.
And then to talk about the word I've translated as overcome. Most commonly translated as to destroy, or in other contexts, conquer or vanquish. So whilst this is the word used and most commonly translated as destroy, the meaning is to overcome, or could be, say, subdue, but maybe overcome, in that the virtue is not destroyed. Because if we say this word destroyed, it's almost as it could be non-existent or could never ripen again. That would be destroyed. If virtue is destroyed, you'd imagine, well, it's in the bin, it's never going to ripen in a desired result. That is not the meaning. So the meaning is more to overcome the strength of or the potency, maybe let's say the potential. Let's say the potential of the virtue is overcome, and the way it's overcome is two general ways: a delay in the ripening of the virtue, or a reduction in the strength of the ripening of the virtue. So let's say one's an ordinary being and has accumulated a virtue that will lead one to attain a path. So one's close to cultivating a path, but now one's got angry. And that anger then overcomes this virtuous imprint that was close to ripening and leading to the attainment of a path. Now, either the attainment of the path will be delayed by a year or a few years or to the next lifetime, or that virtuous imprint is now too weak to lead to such a result, but to a lesser result, but still a virtuous result. So this then is the meaning of this word, to overcome, as in overcome, what do we have here? A merit or virtue accumulated over 1,000 eons. What it means is the virtue that is overcome, it will not ripen in the same time period, or it won't be of the same ripening strength. So the potential of the virtue is impacted.
Chu manguluna ko niba chungse ko ara meba cha ayo yor de ne rasin ya niba de meba cha garwa chu nyunyu ma de ma de na sera niba meba so chu ma do na ko dizemgi ko niba chu ga ze ma lu so na dizemgi ko rasin ya le ya ane ni sum don ma do rasin ma to ya cha garwa che za de ne ge ko ara de meba so yo ma de ne ko chu ji po ga na shi ba na ko niba de chung da je rasin ya ge gyo bo rasin ya de niba chung da je de ne
For example, if you're having a drink, but you want to dilute its impact, you'll mix it with something, perhaps with water, and then it will still be alcohol, but it's now diluted. So the ripening effect will still follow, but would not be as if you hadn't diluted the drink. So this is similar to anger, the impact that anger has in overcoming the ripening potential of virtue. And now that's our time for our first time back together, so we'll conclude therefore this week. Thank you very much.